Om Shri Sai Ram. Good morning, traveling students. Today, we have a fun class. We're going to travel back in time and to different parts of the world. The class is called Japan and Brazil Through the Traveler's Eye. We'll start with our pre-reading activity. Do you like traveling? Everybody likes to travel. It's nice to see other parts of the world and to meet other people and to see different cultures. How does it enhance one's mental horizon? Well, when you speak to other people in different parts of the world, they have different ideas, and then you can share your ideas with them. And you get this nice bonding with other people, and it expands your ideas about certain subjects. Which of our behaviors, gestures, do you think appear strange to a foreign visitor? We're here in India, and people come from all over the world. Tourism is a big business in India. And when they come here from America or from Europe or even South America, what do they see that's different? Okay? Well, one of our behaviors that's different is when we say namaste to each other. We bring our hands together and we worship the God in the other person. Another behavior is sometimes the women will eat after the men. They will feed the men first, and then they will have their meal. And even walking, a lot of times the men will walk together and the women will walk after. In America or in Europe, they all walk together. Then we have, do you think living in a foreign city, visiting a foreign country, makes us aware of our own culture? Of course. We automatically make a comparison. We see what's different in that culture and what we could bring into our culture. And so we actually grow in ideas and different cultural values. Travel writing at this time, when Mike's, the author, wrote this story, was in the 1980s, right in that time, 1960 to 1980s, when Mike's traveled, and he's writing about his experiences. So these are older experiences. And he's writing in 1983, he's saying, travel writing is about writing one's experience of traveling and visiting alien places. And he considers anything outside of your country an alien place. As a genre of writing, it is old as the 2nd century. 2nd century means the time period from 200 to 300. When travelers to Greece recorded their experiences in the form of a diary. So the Greeks, they would travel overland and they would travel by sea and go to different places. And they started writing about these travels in their diary. With the invention of new techniques of navigation and sea voyage during the 9th and 10th centuries, travel writing became popular as more number of people began to explore new places on the globe. Such trips started getting royal patronage. The kings, the queens, all of the ministers wanted to come on these trips and support. New adventures and voyages were even commissioned. Thus, travel writing ceased to be just a description of a new place born out of curiosity and gained political overtones. Now, even after much of the earth has been explored, almost every piece of real estate on this earth has been written about. Its popularity has not waned. It's increased, as can be seen by the immense viewership on its modern media, like TV and internet. Travel writing has come under serious scholarly study in the past 50 years. This was written around 1983, so that's almost 40 years ago. So for the last 90 years is what the author is saying here. It's gone through a big change and become serious and is now part of the cultural studies program in many universities. Travel writing is no longer viewed as a product of some innocent curiosity or an attempt to understand alien culture objectively. Rather, these narratives are telling comments on how a culture gets represented by another culture. And in the process, subtly, or maybe even not so subtly, uphold some cultural values as somehow superior and university to the others, more universal to the others. So there, people from one country, they look at the customs, but they like their own customs, and they write it in a way, and you'll see a little bit of that in this talk. So let's talk about George Mikes. He was a world traveler and an author, and he traveled to many countries, and he picked out two of them for this presentation. We're going to Japan in 1983. And he's writing about what happened in Japan in 1983. So he also is an illustrator. And that's why he loves to go to different places and get new ideas for his illustrations. He wrote many books, including The Hungarian Revolution, Uber Alles, Shakespeare and Myself, Italy for Beginners. He started writing real travel books so that if you wanted to go to Italy, you'd get this book. How to be an artist. How to be inimitable. Inimitable. A beautiful word. How to scrape skies. And how to tango. And how to be an alien. The excerpts chosen in this presentation are from The Land of the Rising Yen, about Japan, in 1983, and How to Tango, about Brazil, in 1966. So let's go in our time machine, and we'll go back to 1983. And the first thing you'll notice when you get to Japan is under Japanese manners. And Mike's was so struck, in a quarter of an hour in Japan will convince you that you are among exquisitely well-mannered people. People who live on a hopelessly overcrowded island have to respect one another's privacy. Dash, or rather, would have to if they had any privacy. Japan is very overcrowded. There's hardly any space at all. In fact, some Japanese people, they can't retire in Japan. It's too expensive. So they buy homes and plots of land in other countries to retire. So they don't have any privacy, but they don't. So courtesy has a double function. It is a courtesy and a substitute privacy. Courtesy is very well expressed in Japan. I went to Japan in 1987, just 4 years after Mike's went there. And things were pretty much the same, a few differences I'll explain later. Take, for example, now in 1983, there were these little red telephones in the streets, shops, and halls of hotels. The instrument is situated on a table or a countertop because they have no space for phone booths. It's just not enough space. You conduct your most confidential business transactions, your intimate love quarrels in public, yet in perfect privacy. Any passerby at the time you're on your phone could listen, but nobody does. A man's telephone receiver is his castle. Now, what happened between 1983, 1987, and now is that the cell phones came into popularity. So now, even in your own country, India, okay, there's no more of these phone booths. Everybody's gone to a cell phone. But what's interesting is the courtesy okay, and the privacy of these phones in Japan, okay, has gone throughout the whole world. People have their cell phones, but they give everybody the courtesy of not listening to their conversation. So here is a custom started in Japan, which has gone worldwide. The next thing that Mike's noticed, okay, you will of course notice immediately that their mania for bowing. Everybody keeps bowing to everybody else. With the ceremonious solemnity of a courtier. A courtier, of course, as you know, is a person that's paid to be very polite to other political people. And he has to bow nicely, he has to have the most exquisite manners. Yet, with a great deal of inimitable grace. So they bow to each other, as you can see in the picture here, very sweetly, with their hands by their side. Bowing is neither less nor more silly than shaking hands or kissing the cheek, but it is quainter, more formal, more oriental, and also infectious. When I was in Japan, I started bowing also. It's just a polite way to say hello or acknowledge another person. After a few hours, you start bowing yourself. But you bow too deeply, you go way down, or not deeply enough. You bow to the wrong man at the wrong time. You do not clasp your hands in front of you, which is bad. And you do, which is worse. If you clasp your hands, it's even worse. You'll see in the picture back here, they have the hands on the side, not in front, not back. You'll discover that the Japanese have a complicated hierarchy. Hierarchy means a system, okay? The higher people get bowed to in a different way. So there's a whole channel of which kind of bows you give to certain people. Who bows to whom, how deeply, and for how long. Interesting, one of the American states in the early times had an early traffic law which laid down that if two cars met at an intersection, neither was to move before the other had gone. If two cars came at the same time, they would wait for the other to move. And sometimes they would keep waiting because they both came at the same time. Now in America, they have the new rule, which is called right of way. So if you come together at the intersection at the same time, the person on the right has the right of way to go forward. But the reason they mentioned this was in Japan, when you both start bowing to each other, okay, neither is to straighten up before the other stands erect in front of him. So they sometimes you bowed to somebody and you're waiting for the other one to get up and you wait a long time. Finally, somebody gets up. A little complicated to us, they manage it without difficulty. And even the smallest difference in rank, standing, age, social position will be subtly reflected in that split second one man's bow is shorter than the other's. They acknowledge a lot of things. They're very intuitive when they see each other. In many cases, there are clear-cut differences in position and no difficulties. The basic rules inside a family, okay? The wife bows to her husband. The child bows to his father. The child bows to younger brothers bow to older brothers, and sisters bow to all brothers of whatever age. I saw babies carried Japanese style on their mother's back in clever little saddles. And whenever the mother bowed, of course, the baby bows on the mother's back. The baby bowed too, somewhat condescendingly. The baby's doesn't know about bowing, so it's wondering what the mother is doing. From his or her majestic height. Japanese stores employ bowing girls who stand at the top of escalators and whose only duty is to bow deeply and deferentially to all and sundry. The Japanese equivalent of our page boys who turn revolving doors for you. You have to remember this was written in 1993, okay? At that time, revolving doors, especially in cold climates, would have this type of cloth between the window and the door, okay? And as the door spun around, this cloth would keep the cold air from coming into the building. And so a lot of times these doors were hard to move. So at expensive stores, they used to have page boys. When you came up, they would start the movement for you. Or they'd wait till you got in and they would push the revolving door around. On the famous and fast Tokaido line between Tokyo and Osaka, two conductors enter the carriage in a slightly theatrical scene. They march to the middle of the coach and ceremoniously bow in both directions and then start checking the tickets. Japan was the first country to have one of these super fast trains. Over 200 miles an hour they go. And because it's fast, it's expensive. So the Japanese would come in and the conductors would come in, one from each side. They bow to each other and bow again at the other side. And then they would start collecting the tickets. In one of the parts of Nara, I met a deer. And when you come into this park, they have these packs of food. So he bought a pack of food. He bought this pack of food, and the deer came and saw him, that he had the pack of food. He came up to me, looked into my eyes, and bowed deeply. You can see the deer has already looked at the person's eyes and is bowing. These deers know how to bow, and bowed deeply. It was no chance gesture. It was a proper and courteous bow. Perhaps deer are more imitative than I knew. Perhaps if they see people bowing all the time, they get into the habit too. Perhaps it is something genetic and in the blood of the Japanese deer. I do not know, but I know that the deer bowed to me and then jumped before I gave it to him and snatched the little food bag from my hand. So he was very polite here, but when he didn't give him the food packet fast enough, he just jumped and grabbed it. In this too, the deer was a true Japanese. You can often see people bowing to each other with ceremonious serenity at bus stops. But as soon as the bus arrives, the bowing gentlemen are transformed into savages. They push each other aside, tread on each other's toes, and shove elbows into each other's stomach to get onto the bus. This is what was seen by George Mikes when he was there in 1983. I didn't see it quite as bad when I was there in 1987. And George Mikes has one more observation to make about Japan. They eat with chopsticks, most of their food, okay? And when they have soup, okay, they will take the noodles and the vegetables and they'll slurp them up. You can see this picture of how he's eating. And so in Japan, when you're invited to a meal or you go to a restaurant, okay, people judge you by how cool you are eating your soup and what kind of manners you have. So Mike's thought that he was being judged by the way he was eating soup, and he has this paragraph here. He says, eating soup has more dangers than almost anything. This is where you can show you're not really a Japanese person. When eating soup, you must make a fearful noise. You must do a slurp. Otherwise, the hostess, okay, it's a sign of appreciation. If you don't, your hostess will think, What an ill-mannered lout. Okay, she'll just think, you don't know how to eat Japanese food. You don't like my soup. You're eating so quietly. But if you do make a slurping sound and you're a foreigner, she will think, no reasonably well brought up European makes such disgusting noises when eating soup. He must be an ill-mannered lout. So, Mike's is feeling that no matter what you do, there is some small judgment when you visit Japan, if you're not from Japan. When I was there, I saw many parts of Tokyo and another city. They appreciate nature. One thing about the Japanese is they love nature. What they loved about America is we sent an apple tree over there, and they put it in a very sacred place. And they practically worshiped this apple tree. And another thing I noticed when I was there in 1987, very expensive. One glass of carrot juice costs $10. So if you go to Japan, you have to take some money with you, no question about it. So let's jump in our travel machine and let's take it over to Brazil. But we're going to also go back in time. We're going back to 1966 is when George Mikes was there and he was writing about it. And it's very interesting. Brazil, especially in Rio de Janeiro, had so much traffic. It was one of the first cities that had a lot of traffic. And now most major cities have a lot of traffic. But at that time, in 1966, George Mikes writes, "Nobody hurries in Brazil. It does not really matter whether you reach your destination an hour too soon, a day late, or not at all. The gray pavements in the streets of Copacabana are often decorated with beautiful black mosaics, a unique type of decoration." You can see from the picture here, this is the trees and there's the ocean. Copacabana is a beach town right near Rio de Janeiro, only 6 miles away, or 6 kilometers away. And you can see here, okay, these black mosaics going all along the streets in Rio de Janeiro and in Copacabana and Ipanema, all of these places, they decorate their streets and their sidewalks with these black mosaics. Only a people alive to the beauty in their surroundings and who have plenty of time for contemplation during their meditative ambulatory exercises would take the trouble to decorate the pavements they walk on. And now, we're going ahead 60 years, okay, from 63, we're going almost 60 years forward. Now in Brazil, they decorate the walls with mosaics, black mosaics and colored mosaics of a lot of the buildings that they walk by. So the streets are decorated and the walls are decorated. However, as soon, this is in, of course, 1966, as soon as these easygoing, leisurely characters, talking about all the people in Brazil, get a steering wheel in their hands, no speed is fast enough for them. You would be inclined to believe that gaining a tenth of a second is a matter of grave importance for all of them all the time. They're all rushing in their cars. It was incredible at that time. And motor cars are extremely expensive in Brazil. At that time, 1966, there was heavy import taxes on cars. Import duties being crippling and murderous. Only a few other poorer South American states are in a worse position in this respect. Complaints are universal. Hardly anybody can afford a car. Yet, this only means that the number of motor vehicles is growing by leaps and bounds. Anybody that can get a car, as soon as they can, they buy one. Almost as if cars were distributed free of charge to all and sundry. Thus, the pedestrian's life is becoming more hazardous every day. He was walking on these streets, but when a car came, you have to scoot out of the way. He tells, "It is not that the drivers do not care about the pedestrians. The trouble is they do care about them. They are in fact on the lookout for them. As soon as a driver notices a pedestrian step off of the pavement, he regards him as fair game. He takes aim and accelerates." The pedestrian has to jump, leap, and run for dear life. He does not resent this in the least. Even though the car is running him down and he jumps out of the way, he doesn't resent this in the least. The driver and the pedestrian, alias hunter and prey, smile amicably as friends to each other. "I win today. You will win tomorrow. Fair enough." They just smile at each other. Very friendly country, especially at that time. The war between the drivers, though, themselves is murderous, but good-tempered. They cut in. They overtake on both sides. They force you to brake violently and commit all the most heinous crimes of the road. And they do this 20 times an hour. But they smile at you all the same, at the same time. And there is no anger, no hostility, no mad hooting, no yelling and screaming at each other or dirty marks or anything like that. They take it as a good time in 1966. So they always smile and have no hostility. They don't want to get angry, which is a beautiful quality. The Avenida Presidente Vargas is the worst place of all. Here we have a picture of that road, okay? You stand there trying to cross the road. You can see a pedestrian on this side has a hard time getting across the other side with all these cars going. There's many cars hardly moving now, but they go as fast as they can. So you stand there trying to cross the road and contemplating the truly fascinating problem. How can crawling traffic proceed at such a terrifying speed? As hour after hour passes, without a ray of hope of an auspicious crossing, you may witness a scene something like this. This man over here sees a friend on the other side of the road. A man on your side suddenly catches sight of a friend on the other side and starts waving to him. At the same time, he looks completely mystified. He yells at the top of his lungs, "How on earth did you get over there?" He shouts across, trying to make himself heard above the traffic. The other fellow sees him, and he says, it is the other fellow's turn to be surprised by this naive, this childlike question, okay? He yells back, how? I was born on this side. And so you can see now, since 1966, they put crosswalks across these major roads. But back in 1966, when cars were first coming into really popularity and everybody could afford one, they had a hard time getting across the road. Now, of course, since 1966, other nations have joined Brazil with huge traffic jams, which has gone on until a few months ago. And now this virus has lessened the traffic to almost non-existent. And now we can go on the roads very easily. So let's switch now to the glossary that we've learned in this nice text. The glossary we have to begin with is mania, all right? There's a mania for bowing in Japan. Mania means obsession or craze. Everybody is bowing to everybody. Condescend, beautiful word, condescend, to stoop, to humiliate. So you do things in a condescending manner. You stoop down, you're condescended, or you condescend somebody else. Genetic. Genetic is our next word. Hereditary. It comes in your genes. It's from your family. It's inherited from your family. Subtly. Subtly means delicate, cunning, elusive. Tokeda, Osaka, and Tokyo. All of these are places in Japan that you visit when you go there. Serenity. Serenity means peacefulness and calmness. The people in Brazil in 1966 were very serene, very peaceful, no rushing around. If they got there, they got there. Highness means hateful and wicked. Copacabana, Avenida Presidente Vargas, these are places in Brazil. So we know Comprehension 1, these are the facts that we've just gone over, but what I'd like to go through is the questions in Comprehension 2. This will bring us more into the ideas that are presented in this beautiful description of traveling and what we learn from other places in the world. Why is bowing in Japan a complicated process? Why is it? Because everybody has a different status. There's women, there's men, there's presidents, there's owners of corporations, there's people that do menial work. So everybody has a status, and the bow and the length of the bow and the way they bow is all determined by who you are in the complicated process. And the reason they ask this question is this is a little bit of a judgment, all right? It's actually more polite to just go namaste and acknowledge the God in the other person with no difference of status. The second question is, why does bowing, a natural practice in Japanese culture, look so quaint and puzzling to the author? Because he's seen all these differences, and he's seen that everybody is bowing. He thinks it's very quaint and very Japanese. And there's other ideas you can come up with from the text. Please write that in your answer. The third question, do you think the author is finding fault with making fun of the culture of bowing in Japan, culture of bowing in Japanese and speeding cars in Brazil? So, is he making fun of the bowing? No, he's making an observation. He's a traveler. This is 1983. He's seeing that the Japanese bowed everybody, and he started bowing too. And he even got bowed to by a deer. He's just saying what the truth is so that when you go to Japan, especially at that time, you knew what to expect. And the speeding cars in Brazil, he was warning the travelers at that time, be very careful in Brazil. It's not like other countries where they acknowledge the pedestrian and give them the right of way. Like in America, you have to give the pedestrian the right of way. So he's warning you, if you go there, what to expect. Now, comprehension number 3 is the highest level of this text that we've written. The whole reason for writing a travel log like this, okay, is answered here. Is a question here, and we have to come up with the answers with a perfect understanding of the text. Number 1, bowing in Japan is quainter, more formal, more oriental. Do you agree? So this is calling on for your ideas based on your culture. If you're American or South American or you're from India, do you feel like this is quainter? Do you feel this is more formal? Do you think this is a judgment on other people that are being bowed to? What do you feel? What's your deepest feeling about this cultural aspect of bowing in Japan? How does it affect you? Second one, describe how traffic in Brazil leads to humorous observations. And the humor is on the end part of his ideas about Brazil. One person is on one side of the road, they can't get to the other side. The traffic is too much. And so the humor is, the person has been there so long, he had to wait, he had to be born there. That's the only way he got there. And he's saying these overpasses have to be built, there has to be crossroads and stoplights, which eventually came into being. But Brazil was like the test pattern for the rest of the world. And now we have stoplights, we have crossovers, we have flyovers. We know how to move traffic and move people. But at this time, it was so hard, it was humorous. 3, what aspects of our social life do you think would appear quainter and odd to a foreign tourist? Okay, India, our social life here, okay, is the oldest civilization. They have the best code of morality. In essence, they have a very spiritual attitude towards everything in life. They say namaste. They bow to the God in the other person, and there's no difference. They bow to the God in this child, they bow to the God in the elder. And for instance, okay, the rest of the world, not so concerned about the highest truths, the highest spirituality, in the International Space Station, which has 18 countries involved in the space station, and has just been come up by America, okay? They have just added new rooms. There's so many rooms. It's the size of a 5-bedroom home inside. But in the International Space Station, there is no spiritual space. India has not gotten up there yet with at least some figure of Krishna or Rama, some spiritual space in the International Space Station. So please answer these questions and turn in your homework. We'll review the same. Thank you for your kind attention. Om Sai Ram.